Times have changed. And that's the big message that I want to get out to everyone. It used to be when a man would retire after 40 years of working for the same company, they'd throw a retirement party for him, give him a gold watch, and he'd go home and sit on the couch, and for the next 5 years, his wife, dutiful wife, would take care of him, and then, as his pastor was wont to say, he would pass on to his final reward. Well, if I may quote one of the current philosophers, no longer current, but was a philosopher till recently, Yogi Berra. And Yogi said, the future ain't what it used to be. And in the 7 years that I spent interviewing people, some of you in this room, I found that that is really true. The thing that has happened that is different is companies no longer want people hanging around for 40 years. So that's unusual for a person to last that long. Secondly, there's gold watch and the retirement party is a thing of the past. As is the dutiful wife, who is no longer taking care of the retired man because she has a career of her own. Things have changed dramatically. And because of those changes, there is a need for a new game plan, a new way for us, you and I, to operate in the period of years ahead of us. Now, if you have reached anywhere near the age of 65, 10 years, give or take, on the front side or the back side, what I'm going to say today in this book is for you. The biggest change that we've had to deal with is in our life expectancy and longevity, and some of you here already are aware of this. The research is being done at Stanford University on the Center for Longevity says that when you achieve the age of 65, you have another 25 or 30 years in front of you. And in the interviews that I conducted, the one question I ran into over and over again is, what do I do now? It's not a question of keeping busy, because we are all busy. We try to get together for lunch or coffee, and it's difficult because of the time. But being busy at the right things is what I want to talk to you about today. I want to talk about the future. I want to talk about your future and my future, because we've got a lot of living to do. We got a lot of years in front of us, and what we do with that time is important. Not just for us, for our personal satisfaction, but for society, for other people. And here's what I mean by that. The work that's being done at the University of Pennsylvania by Martin Seligman and others who have been studying happiness and well-being in life have discovered that there are 5 critical components to being able to enjoy a rich, satisfying life. And those 5 things that we can take out of today's meeting is, number 1, people are looking for personal satisfaction. They want to do those things that are comfortable and convenient and easy for them to do. Unfortunately, as George Bernard Shaw said, if all we ever do in life are those things that are convenient and comfortable, the great things in life will never get done. Secondly, he said that we need to be engaged. And we're engaged when we, as hi, you're just in time. I'm Byron Thompson. I've been talking about myself. You haven't missed a thing. When we're engaged, that's when we lose track of time and space dimension. That's when we are so involved and so engaged in what we're doing that we're no longer easily distracted. And that's an important part of well-being, of having a life that is being well lived. Third component, he said, is relationships. And we know that from our marriages, from our friendships, from the things that we're doing and things that the people we're interacting with. And so that's important. The one that they said was most, or that Seligman said was most important, and perhaps his team, was he called it meaning. And those of you that read my first book, and I see that there are two of you here, that no, Tina, I know that more than two people here read my first book. I call that purpose, and that was the greatest discovery of my life, was the importance of finding purpose, of finding meaning. Now this is what Seligman said about that. He said, hey Tom.
I'm sorry.
He said that human beings want to have meaning in their lives. They do not want to wake up in the morning and realize they're fidgeting until they die. And it's extremely important, because the thing that I found over and over as I was interviewing people for this book was that feeling of distress that comes from not knowing what you're really getting up in the morning for. There was a fifth component that Seligman talked about, and that fifth component is, I don't know what he called it, but keeping track of what we're doing. It's accountability to yourself, and when you do, that's when you get that feeling of satisfaction that comes from crossing off one of the items on your to-do list. It's that feeling that comes from knowing that what you've done that day has been worthwhile. I want to tell you a story that I think illustrates the purpose of what we're doing here. Back in the early 70s, Patricia and Michelle and Anna and I moved to Spain, lived there for nearly 2 years. During that time, which I called Byron's folly afterwards, I managed to go completely broke, came back to the United States, stopped in New York and visited my best friend Bob James in Manhattan, and we were sitting there and he said, so what's the plan, Byron? I said, I don't have a plan, I don't have a job, I'm broke. I'm trying to figure out how to get my family back to California where we lived before we went to Spain. And he kind of smiled at me, and you remember this, Patricia. He said, oh, I'm not worried about you. You'll be all right. He said, what business are you in? I said, I almost cried. I said, I don't have a business. I don't have a job. I don't have any money. He said, no, you're going to be fine. He said, but I mean, what business are you in as a man? It was the most disturbing question anyone ever asked me. I borrowed some money from him the next day, and we headed back to California, and all I could think about for the next few weeks was, what business am I in? What's my purpose? What's my mission? Why am I here? What's my destiny? I got the answer. I picked up the phone. I called him. I said, I got it, Bob. He said, what do you got? I said, the answer to your question. He said, what's the question? I said, you remember the one you asked me about my business? He said, oh yeah, what'd you come up with? And what I told him has impacted my life so deeply, so profoundly, that the reason I'm standing here today was because of the answer I came up with. I found, and I told Bob, I'm in the business of helping other people grow. He says, what do you mean? I said, it doesn't matter whether I'm teaching a class, I'm speaking to a group, I'm having lunch or coffee with a friend. I just want to find ways to help them become all that they can become. He said, that's great. I went on from there to go into the career that I went into. That was some 40 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since, and that's why I'm here today. That's why I've written this book, because I dearly, deeply want you to become all that you can become. And as a result of it, and this is the more important reason, I want you to have an impact on the people you interact with. I want you to affect the society that we operate with in the future. Now, I learned 3 things that I'd like to share with you. And those 3 things, I think, are at the heart of all of this. Number 1, we become what we think about all day long, every day. And you know that if you read the first book, that I strongly believe in the power of our thoughts and what they do for our lives. I read James Allen's As a Man Thinketh, when I was in my early 20s, and I've read it ever since, every 10 years at least every 10 years once. And I know that this is true. I remember that I remember that, and then I have the two-back moment where the thought doesn't come. Jerry, there's some wine over there if you'd like a glass.
Thank you.
All right. The thing I did want to say, because I'm saying things that as I look around the room, there's some very learned, intelligent people here. You already know a lot of what I'm saying. But Herbert Spencer, the English philosopher and educator, said, we all need more to be reminded than we need to be taught. So treat some of these ideas as reminders of things that you've already learned, things that you know about achieving success and prosperity in life. So I also learned that in addition to becoming all that we can become by thinking about the things that we become, it's never too late to get started. We can do this. Some of us are already at the age of 65. Some of you, I'm looking forward to it when I get there. And I think of Grandma Moses' inspiring example, took up painting when she was 78 years old, and then had a very successful career past 100. So I want to emphasize again that we have years in front of us, and what we do with those years are important. So it's not too late to set new goals for ourselves, not too late to do some of those important things that we wanted to do in our lives. And let me parenthetically throw this thought in, that when I read the poetry of William Blake, or I read Shakespeare's plays, or I attempt to plow through Stephen Hawking's The History of Time, some of you have already read it, and I say, I don't get it. And I realized just because I don't get it doesn't mean it's not there. So I'd encourage all of us as we're pursuing new dreams, new hopes, to look for things that are out of our comfort zone, as I did when I went into a business that was completely out of my comfort zone, and managed to be able to accomplish the things that I have so far in my life, which I consider to be a life being well lived. And that's the challenge I want to throw down for everybody here. When Rabbi Harold Kushner, in his book, When Everything You've Ever Wanted Is Not Enough, said, in counseling people on their deathbeds, he found that those people who had the most difficulty dying were those people that realized that their lives hadn't mattered. They hadn't made a difference. And the opposite of that are those people that could accept death most graciously were the ones that realized that their living had mattered. I want your life to matter. And not just for you. I want you to be happy. I want you to be satisfied. I want you to help your children, your friends, your family to be fulfilled and happy. But I want you to use your highest and best skills. I want you to make a difference in the world. I want you to do those things that contribute to your own growth and development, and that's going to be an inspiration to other people. I'd like to close with one thought, and that is, you only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough. Thank you.